Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Legal Weekly Wine, where we discuss the nation's hottest legal topics, uncorked. Today, we are going to do an update. We did a full segment on TikTok and the law that came out and was supposed to take effect a couple of weeks ago. We did a full segment on that, which we'll put in the description of today's episode. But what we're discussing today is the update, because at this point we still have TikTok, and the question is why, and is it legal? That's what we're going to touch on today. I'm Virginia Tarani. I am the CEO of The Law Unscripted, which hosts the Legal Weekly Wine, and I am joined today by my colleague and my father, the eminent Dr. John Vial, who is the Dean of the Honors College of Middle Tennessee State University and an expert in the Constitution, constitutional law, the amending process, and goodness, I always want to say political science, but you tell me not to. Professor of political science, and goodness, how many books do you have now?
A few.
A few. And I say that because just before this, we were talking about one of his books that had come out again. So we will talk about that at the end of the episode. But I think it's, over 50 now?
Yeah, if you count all the edited ones. Throw in all the different editions, and I'd be way up there. But.
Yes, exactly. So check out some of those. But today, so I'm the attorney on the group. I've been practicing almost 20 years. I've done criminal law. I've done civil law. Right now, I'm doing, I'm doing mostly personal injury, but we've got a good dialogue back and forth on TikTok. So stay with us, and don't forget to click like and subscribe so that you can follow our channel, as well as push it out to others who may be interested. And also check out thelawunscripted.com. Now, for our weekly wine, I normally am drinking wine, but we are taping this early in the morning. So Dr. Vial and I have other objects than wine, and Dr. Vial has something different. What are you drinking?
Hour 8, Mountain Berry Blast. A reminder of my childhood when I would often get up early in the morning with my mother and go berry picking.
That's so sweet. Yes. So you have some, normally for those of you who don't know, he's drinking a Pepsi or a water. So this is indeed very different for you. I am normally drinking wine. I'm going to show you a bottle of wine because
you're not normally drinking wine.
On
you
the
drink
show.
Wine on the program from time to time.
That's right.
Let's clarify this.
I like it. Spoken like a true father here. Yes, I don't normally drink wine, but on the show, I normally drink a glass of wine. Like I said, this morning, I'm not going to, but I'm going to show you a bottle of one of my favorites. This is from Morais Vineyards and Winery. Those of you who followed us the last couple of years know that Morais Vineyards have my favorite wines, absolute favorite ones. And this one is it's called a green wine, but it's a white wine, and it's the Battlefield. This is from Bealton, Virginia. Beautiful little bottle. Almost looks like, I hate to even say like a bullet casing or like a shotgun casing on top, the way that it's set up, but I'm going to say that. Anyway, so it's a beautiful bottle. Love this wine. Highly recommend it. And I am going to drink this morning. I'm going to drink an Alani. It's peach flavored. It is an energy drink because we're going to tape a couple of these at a time. So catch out our other podcasts coming up, but that's what we're doing. Cheers, Dr. Vial, and let's get started. All right, so we did put out our podcast on the end of TikTok, why it was happening, how it was happening, and Dr. Vial, give us a very brief overview of why it was put in place, what the law was, and how it went into effect.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Had there been a Supreme Court decision? I think there was.
There was.
Last one.
Yes, we had already gotten to that.
Yeah, there's, TikTok, as others will know better than I do, is a very popular social media site, supposed to have, I believe, at least 170 million or so American viewers.
Yeah, just in America.
Right. It's owned by ByteDance, which is in China and subject to, I guess what we would say would be data mining.
Yes.
And subject to gathering information about American citizens that could, in a case of conflict, end up being detrimental to national security. So
Right.
Congress, a bipartisan majority of Congress adopted a law about a year or so ago, which essentially said if by, I believe it was January 19th of 2025, this company did not divest itself.
Of China.
Right. In other words, if the company was not sold to a non-Chinese entity, that the U.S. would block access and fine anyone who provided access to American users. And that law went into effect, I believe, literally the day before Trump was inaugurated.
Correct.
And about a
That's
day or
Sunday.
so it went black, I think, and I think that was right as we did the last issue. It was just about ready to do that. Went black for a day or so, and then Trump issued an executive order giving, I believe, a 75-day extension. It might be a 90-day. I cannot remember. But what's ironic here is that Trump was an original supporter of this bill.
That's why it
He
started, is in his own presidency, he put forward, let's get rid of the Chinese government as a spy,
Right.
essentially.
And as I think we've mentioned, I mean, China has been very aggressive. It is, it's colliding with boats in the Philippines.
Right.
It seems to be somewhat threatening to Japan, but most perilously, it has, it still maintains that there is only one China, which includes Taiwan, what used to be Formosa, an island off the coast where the nationalists who had opposed the communists went. And there are legitimate threats of an actual invasion. And by the way, Taiwan is a place where a lot of our chips have been manufactured, computer chips.
Oh, I was like,
I believe
really?
it.
The
Yeah, I
potato
believe
chip?
it's. I
Sorry, you
believe
caught
it's.
me there.
Yeah, yeah.
There are
What would we do?
potato chips?
What would we do at the Super Bowl if we don't have chips? A different
Right.
kind of chips.
So sorry. My mind is clearly in the morning here.
Okay, fair enough. But in any event, they have been very aggressive and have
There's
really been
even
threatening invasion, which could
right.
result in millions of lives.
And there's
Uh,
even suspected presence, if not more than suspected presence, near the Panama Canal, which
well,
is potentially. It's
I
not
think
necessary. Right.
the broader way of phrasing that is to say that China, they have what's known as a belts and roads. Is that what it is? Or
That sounds
the,
right. Mm-hmm.
it has this project in Africa, in South America, and elsewhere
Mm-hmm.
of building infrastructure for these countries in the hopes of strengthening their alliances. And in many cases, some of the countries which originally saw this as a boon are now saying, well, the Chinese want too much control,
They're concerned.
or we're in debt to them now and we can't pay it, those kind of things.
Or they have
But
too much access now to
right,
different places where they could invade or have an attack. So there
right.
are security concerns.
Well, and China is, and here I should have done a little bit more homework, I fear, but it is either the largest economy or the second largest economy in the world. It's definitely a trading partner. And Trump, of course, has been among those who have said that we need higher tariffs, particularly for, I mean, they're big competitors right now in the electric car area,
Right.
and other areas. And some of these, it's a little bit like the controversy we've had with Japan, where I'm not sure we've come down on the right side of this, but the Japanese companies were ready to buy U.S. steel, and America, the president, I guess it was the president, I believe it's Trump, who said, this isn't a good thing. We need, if we ever went to war with Japan, we need steel. We can't, I think the likelihood of going to war with Japan is relatively remote.
Right.
It happened once, but not they have been an ally essentially since that time. But you always have to be careful, and especially like in chip manufacturing, um, if we had a war and we needed these for, for uh, aircraft or
Right.
ships at sea, we don't want to be dependent on somebody who's a potential enemy. So Trump has made quite a turnabout.
Well,
I
and
think the
this
most
was before we get there. So yes, it was started by Trump, but then it went through, like you were saying. I think it's important to note it went through both houses of Congress.
absolutely and
Was
strong
bipartisan
majority.
passed, and then
Right.
it did go up to, and then it was signed by a president. So it went
Yes.
through the legislative power and branch. It was
Two
signed
houses.
by
Yes.
the executive branch, and then it was
Yes.
reviewed and
Right.
confirmed by the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, by a per curiam decision that said, yes, we agree with the law. We believe it's constitutional. It stands up. So now we have Trump, like you said, doing about face, ordering, hey, we're going to suspend this law, at least for this number of days. Is that legal?
In my judgment, no. Now, what's fascinating is that some of the people who supported this bill are among Trump's strongest supporters. They have largely been silent. And I guess the other, I mean, this will get into probably a discussion another time about, the president's executive order, which basically says we're not going to spend any money for the next 3 months, which puts things in utter chaos.
Right.
But presidents have some power to suspend spending on certain projects. Let's say, if $100 million is allocated for a bridge and you build it with 90 million, I don't think there's anybody who says the president should go ahead and give them another 10 million because that's what the
Right.
appropriation
Let's
was.
finish it up. Exactly.
Those kind of things are usually written in laws. If such and such happens, then the president can suspend. But to categorically take a law and just suspend it without getting authorization from Congress, in my book, is very serious. I'm going to kick it back to you. If you read the Federalist, 3 branches of government, what are their primary powers?
Well, the
Power of
legislative, power of the purse,
Congress,
is Congress.
President is
The military?
power of the sword.
Whew.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm back in your class.
You
That
are.
was so long ago.
And the courts, this one, okay, the lawyer's going to get this one.
I know it's the power of review, but I don't know what.
Judicial review. Basically, what in the Federalist Papers, Hamilton says it's the power of judgment.
Okay,
So
goodness.
one makes the law, the other enforces the law, the third oversees the law to make sure it's congruent with the Constitution and sometimes interprets what it means. And
In
the
this
most
case,
basic
we had
power of Congress
right,
is the power of the purse.
and to make law.
Yeah, and right, power to make law. But
And
what's
they
interesting
did.
is most of the people, Trump supporters who were strong proponents of this law, have basically been silent. And here's where the system may or may not be working.
Oh,
James
interesting.
Madison said, the key to separation of powers is that the interest of the man must be congruent with the interests of the place. Meaning that if you're a member of Congress, you should be fighting to keep your power as a member of Congress.
Which
And
isn't
same
that
for
true?
president.
Why
You're-
wouldn't you want to? Don't give it to somebody else. You want to keep yours. Let them play in their lane.
Right.
You
right.
have your power. Give them
And,
their
and it's
power.
not just a personal thing, but I mean, their terms were specifically put in there so they would fight to keep the power that Madison and others thought was most appropriate for a legislative body.
Well, in that,
similarly,
it's, everybody essentially is fighting for the people. But of all of the people here, Congress represents, in my mind, the people the most because they're individually selected from regions, voted by their regions, by their states into these places. So if anyone should be fighting for the people, it should be these congressmen and women, where they're saying, hey, my citizens, the people that I represent, They want this. They're proxies for the people. They're not just their own of who
and where
have
that is
elected
broken
them.
down in part is traced back to one of my not favorite presidents, Woodrow Wilson.
Wilson. I know who that is.
Who considered the president to be the only person in the nation, and in a sense he's correct, he and the vice president, the only ones who are elected by all the people. So he came up with this sort of mandate or plebiscitary presidents. Once you vote for the president, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. Well, we just selected the president. He got both the electoral college and the majority vote, which he did. First time he got both. He has a mandate. Well, he has one kind of mandate, but members of Congress, particularly the House of Representatives, they're elected every 2 years.
Yes.
So if anybody's close to the people, it's going to be the House. And frankly, their election was a lot closer than that of Trump. So,
and even Trump's election, the popular vote was not even 50%.
No. And which is he's still a legitimate president.
Absolutely. But it's not, in my mind, it's not a mandate when you don't even have 50% of the vote. Yes, you have the vote. You're absolutely president. He got a lot of the electoral college. And now I'm seeing another president on the screen. For those of you who are listening, Dr. Weil is holding up his most recent book.
No, it's not my book.
Oh, right. Okay. But
it's a book that I'm reviewing.
That's right.
There's a chapter in here. And I'm going to have to look up. I should know. He's a noted scholar, and I cannot remember where he's from. But the last chapter of this book.
Tell us the name of the book so that we all know.
Okay, the book is called James Madison's Constitution.
Okay.
A Double Security and a Parchment Barrier. Okay. And, Madison's often called the father of the Constitution. There's a wonderfa essay in here by someone, by a colleague of mine that I've met before, Lynn Uzel. I have done an article in a chapter in a book on whether Madison is the father of the Constitution, and she spars with me a little bit and concludes that he's the father in the best way, which is not only in physically fathering a child, but also in guiding the nation through the first 40 years of its history.
Right.
Which is sort of interesting. But this last chapter, and did I give you his name? German, right? Who's actually a new assistant professor, Arizona State University, has this wonderful article called Beyond, or the last essay called Beyond Mandate Talk. And what he does is he takes it from a separation of powers issue, which is to say, in a sense, each branch of government has a kind of mandate,
right? But
particularly the House of Representatives, 2-year terms, President 4-year terms, so he's somewhere between the House and the Senate,
right?
And the judiciary, although it isn't elected, is appointed and confirmed by both President and Congress,
right?
And that each has its own mandate, if you will, its own responsibility. And if we get an imperial presidency that approaches a king, it will be because the other two branches haven't done their duty.
Right.
And my great concern about Trump versus United States, or was it the other way around?
Right. The privilege,
the case that gave, in my judgment, the court was too deferential to presidential prerogatives and the need for secrecy. I think there is a need for executive privilege, but I think it is limited when there are indications that this privilege went beyond that which was legal or that which was moral.
Right. And that was the Supreme Court decision last year of how far it was the difference between official duties of the president and unofficial duties, for which he could be prosecuted.
Right.
And we do have a podcast on that, and essentially, I believe the title was something like "Did We Make Him King?" And I encourage people to go back to that podcast because, in my mind, it is a portion of the Supreme Court giving over some of the power to Donald Trump or to the president, which in this case right now is Donald Trump, any president, and with the legislature, are we also giving him more power? But I tell you, in this case for TikTok specifically, my husband was not happy. I was yelling at the television. And it's happened more and more. And he keeps saying this is so political. And I keep saying, no, it's a legal issue. This is a legal issue. And I'm an attorney. I became an attorney for a reason. Dad, you raised me where between right and wrong, right? And that's part of the reason I became an attorney is I believe in justice. I believe in following the law. I believe in making sure people are taken care of by the law. So even, the prosecutor side of me is also a criminal defense attorney. There are laws put in effect to help both sides, right? And the fundamental law is the Constitution. So in my lawyer mindset, in my justice, and here's how the Constitution works, here's how our basic fundamental laws work, I'm yelling saying, this is a law that has been enacted, signed, and reviewed by all three branches of government. And to have a president, any president, name him whoever, pick a name, but at this point it's Donald Trump, to say, I'm wiping out the law, at least pausing it, right? In this case, right. Technically pausing it, but I'm going to put this law on hold because I want to. And
there's a further dimension.
Yeah. Right. But with this, it's like, no, you can't. This has already been vetted by all three branches of government. In my mind, it's someone like a king who's coming and saying, well, I don't like that law. We'll just get rid of it. So the TikTok was out for a day, if even 24 hours. It actually went out on Saturday and it was back up by the end of Sunday. And it's not that I don't like TikTok. It's not that I don't support everyone who is saying this is freedom of speech. But with the review of the implementation of the law and how it was, I do not see a legal avenue unless it goes back to Congress and is reviewed and revisited and revoked by Congress. I do not see a legal way to enact this executive order that seems to be the creation of a law that gets rid of another law, but only by one branch of the government.
And that the other dimension of this, which might be even as serious, is there a chance that Trump himself, or the so-called tech bros, Elon Musk and the like,
right,
will eventually, this gives them a chance to
purchase it
and make profit on something that Trump has facilitated.
Right.
Trump has always sort of skirted the line. And part of it is he's such a wealthy person and has so
he's
many
a businessman.
Business interests. But I believe this last week, Republicans met down at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
I doubt that their rooms were free there.
Yeah.
I suspect that Trump made money on that. Well, maybe that's...
Or if not, it was the other way. Yeah.
Right. Trump
Right.
signs Bibles and sells them. I'm sure he makes money on that.
Shouldn't the person signing a Bible be Jesus or God, the person who created it? And if we really want to get technical, maybe Matthew,
blood, so.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, at least the writers of each chapter. But why is anyway? Okay, my religious side getting in. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the concern here is, there doesn't seem to be much separation between the president and his business interests.
Right.
And, he himself has, True Social.
Yes.
He has his own social media.
Elon Musk has
X. And, if this is ultimately bought by someone else, will it be one of Trump's friends? Will he have put his thumb on the scale?
Will the money have been invested in a back channel?
Right. And I don't know that, not all of this is intended as accusations so much as concerns.
Right. Where's the, it's just like with any board. You have, corporations and their fiduciaries and their ethics within the foundations and the boards and these companies of who can sit on a board, who can invest in a board, who can't invest in a company based on their title based on what their role is in the company. And it's so that these business interests aren't there to affect decision making. I, as an attorney, can't invest in certain things. There are ethical duties out there that, we talked about this last year, that aren't put in place on other things. You would think that the rules of ethics that apply to all attorneys should immediately apply to the Supreme Court justices. Apparently, they don't. So why wouldn't these business interest rules apply to the president? But I don't see any rules that they do.
When Jimmy Carter left office, he had put his farm in trust.
Right.
And if I remember, he was like $1 million in debt when he got out of office. He had to sell some of it off and make all these kind of decisions. He did it the right way, and it hurt him. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that Trump ought to have to, lose his money in order to become president. But anytime there's a possible, we want the primary motive of Trump, any president, to be the common interest, the common good. And sometimes that, free enterprise is supposed to work so that if all of us work hard to do our jobs, we make more money and the economy grows.
It bolsters the economy, yes.
Right. But when someone is head of a country, this happens in Latin America, right?
Yes.
You see the billionaire, the couple leaders at the top getting all the money and everybody else getting the breadcrumbs.
Well, but that's also the idea of the oligarchs in Russia.
Well, it is, right. Putin is supposed to have billions and billions of dollars. And apparently they got a lot of it when they took property that the communists had confiscated and then began selling it back and keeping profits. So, these are not insignificant, and they're not, for the most part, I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that says anything about it directly, other than, what you swear to do is to uphold the Constitution of the United States, not to further your own business interests.
Right, that there's supposed to be some kind of separation. So, Dr. Weil, let's wind up with this question: is well, I guess a two-part. Is anybody going to challenge this? And if so, who has standing?
It's a good question. I suppose potentially another media company that wasn't interested in buying this
right
could claim that, but I mean, the primary interest that was at stake was not a business interest. The primary stated concern for the law was national security.
Exactly.
And I suppose, if I had the money, well, access to an attorney, maybe I do have the latter at least.
You do?
Maybe I could sue as a citizen of the United States who thinks national security is a jeopardy. But that clearly would be one where my standing would be sort of like a taxpayer, the old-fashioned taxpayer suit, where my individual interest in security is no greater than that of any of the other 320 million Americans. So it's unlikely that I would have standing there.
Would it make sense? Would the states have standing then? Could they say, we're part of the United States and our interest for our citizens is security. We had a law that we believed would protect us. It's been, set aside by the executive. Can they do it through the attorneys general of the different states?
It might be more likely that members of Congress who supported this law could do that.
Fascinating.
And I know there had been a couple such cases, and I cannot remember, frankly, how they turned out. The court is reluctant to get involved in interbranch disputes. I mean, sometimes they will do it, sometimes they have to do it. They're more likely to intervene in nation-state disputes than they are in particularly if it deals with foreign policy.
Right.
Because, the Constitution, the Congress has the power of the purse and the power to declare war, but the president is commander-in-chief. So there's shared powers there that are very difficult for members of the court who don't have particular expertise in that area to resolve. So I'm not sure that, and presumably, if there's a good side to this, it's that the order apparently only lasts 75 or 90 days, whichever it is.
Well,
And maybe
but
there will
can't he
be some.
just do another executive order saying
Well,
I'm
I don't
extended
know. I
another
mean,
90 days? To me, it seems infinite possibilities. If I did it once,
yeah,
I'll do it again.
I'm very concerned about executive orders.
Yes.
For one thing, they don't have the permanency of laws.
They can be
Wha-
taken down by
as
the next president.
Yeah, I mean, Biden signed several on his first day. Uh, Obviously, Trump just sort of squared that and did a lot more. But
Right.
these are not going to last forever, and it makes government and investing, if we want to get into that, it makes it very unpredictable because from one administration to the other, instead of having easy transitions, you're
Mm,
going to have jolts. And that's
right.
what we used to accuse parliamentary governments of doing.
Mm,
In Parliament, they fuse the executive and the legislative. Your prime minister
right.
is the head of Congress. And one of the criticisms against that is, well, policy flips back and forth. And if you rely too much on executive orders, you get much the same thing.
Yeah. And we're going to pick up that topic in another. So that was TikTok, but we are doing a series and we were told by some of our listeners, look, make sure it's legal and not political. And frankly, the hard part right now is a lot of the political issues are legal. So we're trying to stick to the legal part of it rather than just political opinion. Bear with us on that. But the next topics that we're going to touch are exactly what you're hinting at here, Dr. Weil, is the issue of federal aid. Right, is the grants, the money that's been allocated by Congress, and these executive orders that are going back and forth. One recently that took away or paused all of the federal aid and monies for a certain amount of time, and then the quick flip-flop of, well, now I'm revoking that. So we're going to talk about that in another episode as to what's the legality of that. Can a president overturn something that's congressional through the power of the purse? Stay tuned for that episode. We're also going to touch the issue of birthright citizenship. And bear with us. It's, yes, it's a hot button political topic, but the question is a legal one. So we're going to take you through the legal issues of birthright citizenship. And another one we're going to do is the issue of the inspectors general that have recently been fired by the executive branch. And is that legal? What are the laws that these are based on? So we're going to take you through the legalities, the laws, the original code sections that we're viewing, and why these are political issues. So that's what we've got coming up, and we have a lot of news to uncork on the Legal Weekly Wine. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time on this Legal Weekly Wine.